We talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice.
Welcome, everyone, to the After Practice Podcast with myself, Lake Lewis. Appreciate you joining me today. As always, you can subscribe to this podcast. I let everybody know, but yes, you can subscribe to this podcast on pretty much all the major podcast carriers: Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, you name it. This podcast is sitting right there for your listening enjoyment. If you want to watch this podcast, all you have to do is go to sportsjourney.com and you can actually see the actual podcast with video and, hosting this face right here. So, hey, check it out. Remember, you also can check it out on YouTube. So, trying to get those YouTube subscribers up. You can go to Sports Journey's YouTube page where you'll see this podcast sitting on there as well. So, appreciate everybody checking us out. I tried to wait to do today's episode just from the standpoint that the Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Ravens were playing a makeup game after a makeup game after a makeup game, a game that was originally intended to be on Thursday, the late game tilt on Thanksgiving night. It didn't happen. Baltimore Ravens were besieged by COVID outbreaks with several players, including starting quarterback Lamar Jackson. So they were shorthanded severely today against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That game was rescheduled from Thursday to Sunday to Monday to Tuesday, then ultimately today. So I'm happy the league got that game in. And I'm also happy that, I hate to say it, but I'm happy that Baltimore lost. And the reason why I'm happy that Baltimore lost is because how fitting would it be for the Washington football team after everything that they've gone through, the name change, the allegations that were in-house, just so many wrong things that were happening for an organization that needed to cleanse itself and truly, truly cleanse itself. Ron Rivera, their new coach, seems to have done that, seems to be taking this thing in the right direction. And what better way to really see how far you've come as an organization than to go up into Pittsburgh on Monday now in a primetime game and hang a W on Pittsburgh, give them their first L of the season. This game to me is eerily similar to when I was much younger than some of you watching this. I'm not going to date myself, but this game reminds me of years ago, long time ago, when the then Washington Redskins were coming into a game 11-0 against a winless Dallas Cowboys football team, and Dallas beat them. Washington clearly has W, so they're not coming into this game winless. But at the same time, 4 wins, 7 losses, that's not necessarily something to write home about. However, this year, 2020, this is a football team that's in first place, tied with the New York Giants. Everything to play for. Can you catch Pittsburgh? I don't want to say napping, but let's call it like it is. It's draining on a football team to have to wait day in and day out to play. So if you're Pittsburgh and you were supposed to play 4 days ago and then you don't play, perhaps there's going to be some type of layover, some type of hangover, so to speak, that gets them on Monday. I would like to think that Washington will have a chance. And we're not going to break this one down too much today because we've got several more days until Monday. We'll get more in depth on this game, specifically like on Friday, where I give you my predictions, of course. But for the game itself, everything is aligning itself for Washington now. I went on a local affiliate today here in D.C. area, ABC Channel 7, with my good friend Scott Abraham, and I said the same thing. If you look at the scenarios that are unfolding for the Washington football team right now, I don't know what more, as far as a storyline or a script could be written for their betterment. Because look at it this way. You're getting Pittsburgh, who's going to probably be a little tired, a little nicked up. It was a physical game today in their 19-14 win. So you're getting them, kind of off a little bit. They didn't play particularly well. I saw some kinks in the armor too, so to speak, that come Friday we'll break down a little bit more as far as what Washington can do to exploit Pittsburgh if possible. But then you think of it this way. The team that Washington's tied with, the New York Football Giants. Daniel Jones, their starting quarterback's not playing this weekend, and they travel all the way out to Seattle. Pretty much should lose that football game. Yes, we've seen crazier things said, than done. And obviously we're talking about Washington beating Pittsburgh, which some people think is, lunacy on my behalf to be talking about it. But nevertheless, you look at New York. They're without their starting quarterback. They're traveling to Seattle, a team that's trying to, play for a top seed, a team that's, competing to be one of the big dogs come playoff time. They're battling the Rams in their own division, and also the New Orleans Saints, who are at 9-2 right now. So Seattle needs to win. They beat the Eagles on Monday night, but they still have to keep winning and try to get a home playoff game, because if not, they're going to be on the road. So they have every incentive to beat the New York Giants. That favors Washington. I don't want to hear anyone say, it favors Washington because now Washington can go to Pittsburgh and lose and nothing really changes. No. You want to separate yourself because, as we talked about the other day on this podcast, the schedule for Washington's brutal. It really is down the stretch. It's tough. They're going to earn it if they make the playoffs. Hell, if they make the playoffs, they're going to be playoff battle tested because of the way the end of their season is. The teams that they have to play are all quality football teams. So this game has the makings of, the David versus Goliath. It really, really does. You know what's crazy? It's going to pit two teams that are, possibly winning their division or leading their division. So two first-place divisional teams are playing each other. Pittsburgh's not too far from here. I'll be there at Heinz Field. I'm looking forward to it. Actually being my first game of the season traveling. COVID has crippled a lot of travel plans for a lot of us in the media, so I look forward to getting up there. I'm looking forward to seeing Washington try to shock the world. I know a lot of you out there are, think it may be wishful thinking, but you still have to strap it up. You still have to put your helmet on, your cleats on the same way the Steelers do. And again, from what I saw today against the Ravens, Baltimore had many chances to put the ball in the end zone on Pittsburgh. They were aided in some bad officiating at times. I think at the end of the first half, clearly Pittsburgh was a delay of game. They held down, Baltimore's running back, to basically run the clock off. Baltimore had to force one play. Obviously, Robert Griffin didn't get that job done. And for the most part, looking at Robert Griffin too, man, that guy's a shell of what we saw here as a rookie. And I'm starting to really, really wonder, was that offense that innovative at the time that it made a guy that, I'm not taking the shot because he's a guy I consider a friend. I had some decent times with him when he was here. I actually ruptured my Achilles tendon playing basketball with him, but that's a whole nother story. I'll say, though, nice guy. But you're starting to see now that it might be the end of the road for him. There's just things that he can't do right now. And Trace McSorley came in and expelled him. Actually looked pretty decent in doing so. Come on now. It's all the time. I don't know why when I do my shows, I always somehow, some way get back to my school and have to hit you with the "we are." Trace McSorley, of course. But I saw some holes in that Pittsburgh team that Washington does some things well that could pretty much play into a factor in the game. Washington's defensive front four, Montez Sweat, Chase Young, Deron Payne, John Allen, Tim Settle, these guys get after it. And that's exactly what you need if you're going to beat Pittsburgh. You've got to get in Ben Roethlisberger's face. He's a physical guy. He's a big quarterback. He can make things happen in the pocket to extend plays. But you've got to get on him because if not, he's going to pick you apart with their receiving core. Pittsburgh might have, outside of Kansas City, the two best receiving cores in all of football. So that's not necessarily a strength of the Washington football defense either. Their secondary has been I don't want to say lit up. They've given up big play after big play after big play over the past several weeks. The Detroit game, they gave up big plays. You go back to last week's game against Dallas. They gave up a couple big plays. Amari Cooper got behind Ronald Darby on a big play. So if you're Washington, you've got to get maximum pressure on Ben Roethlisberger if you think you're going to have a chance to win this football game. So I'm interested. I'm really interested to see how this thing unfolds. Now, I'm going to ask you, spread. What would be the spread, come tomorrow morning? I'm pretty much thinking it may be 6.5, 7 point spread. Pittsburgh's clearly going to be favored to win this football game. And I don't even think people think it's going to be close. But it's just something I'm telling you folks, I don't know what it is. You just see things happen sometimes in life where it's just almost too good to be true. Everything aligns itself, and that's what's happening for Washington right now. Football team that struggled on the road this year. They're 1-4 on the road. Their 4 wins that have been against teams with losing records, 2 against Dallas, 1 against the Eagles going back to week 1, and obviously against Cincinnati. So they've yet to beat a team with a winning record. What better way to do it than to beat the team with the best record in all of football? And I'll tell you what, the more I think about this, the more I'm talking out live to you, there's no way that Pittsburgh's coming in this game with the mentality of, this is one that if they give one away, this is the one they give away. You can't think that way. I don't even think they're playing for history. They're just playing week to week. Mike Tomlin's going to, make them know they're 1-0 every week. You just play that week. But Pittsburgh can't afford to lose, because if they lose one game, perhaps they flip now with Kansas City. If you're Pittsburgh, you don't want to go to KC for the AFC Championship game or go to KC at any point in the playoffs. You want Kansas City coming into Pittsburgh. You want Kansas City coming into Heinz Field. So it'll be a game that Pittsburgh's going to come out and they're going to lay it all out on the line. And I'm just happy because as I watched the Ravens game today and I saw Baltimore squander opportunity after opportunity, it just made me think, Washington, how many of you as a fan out there want them to be the team to pluck Pittsburgh off the perch, that knock Pittsburgh from the undefeated ranks? Well, we've got a chance, and it's on Monday. I'm not necessarily thrilled that, I got to go up there on Monday and not Sunday, but at this, nevertheless, it's a primetime game. It's a game that now there's 3 games on Monday, so I'm not quite sure if you want to call it primetime, but at the, nevertheless, it's a Monday. It's a game that people are clearly going to watch. Washington-Dallas on Thanksgiving Day had the highest rating or highest watched game rating-wise this year in the NFL. That's a good thing. And if these young guys go out and show out again in Pittsburgh, hell, I think a lot of people are going to take that. A lot of people are going to like that. Look, as always, you can check out this. You can subscribe to it. But you can also check out the great work from a lot of really hardworking individuals who make me look good at Sports Journey. I'm talking about the Diane Cheese Bros, the Karita Parks, the DJ Blands, the Mike Grays, the Surge the Shooter, Sir Gil Lewis, that's his name, but I'm a Surge the Shooter. Jeff Little, just a lot of people. Bob Matthews is doing a great job. He's got a great podcast you can check out too, the Bob Matthews Show. You can check out Mike Gray. He's got a great podcast on there. Wole Akinso, my boy, Urban Sports Scene. They're part of Sports Journey now, so you can check out their podcast. So we're working to bring some people to the party. A couple new faces will be joining too as well. So excited about everything going on there. And, remember, you can always follow Sports Journey, sportsjourney.com. You can follow Sports Journey on social media on Facebook and Instagram at SportsJourney.com. And you can also follow Sports Journey on Twitter at Sports Journey. Naturally, with myself, you can follow me, Lake Lewis, on Twitter at Lake Lewis, and on Instagram and Facebook at Lake Lewis Jr. Remember, subscribe. We're trying to get those YouTube, hits up, and that's how you can see this video. It's on Sports Journey, but, it's coming from YouTube, so check us out on there. this isn't an everyday thing, so I want to let everyone know I'm not doing this video every day. It'll be a couple times during the week, but the audio version, yes, you can get that daily. So really, really excited about where we're going with all this stuff. It's a lot of work. Trust me, it's a lot of work. A little off script as far as the time we did it today, but I figured, we'll talk about after the game, what we saw, what we, think can happen. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll give you the second half of our show. We'll start talking some college football because there's a lot of storylines starting to develop with college football as far as trying to get this playoff. And, Ohio State, a Big Ten team, I'm starting to really wonder. Michigan cancels their game this week, so they're not playing against the University of Maryland. That's, 3 games in a row, if I'm not mistaken, for the University of Maryland to not play a game. And these were all good barometer games for Maryland. Maryland did play, and lost to Indiana, but it's another game that Maryland won't play on their schedule. And the big one looms next week, the game, so to speak, Michigan versus Ohio State. We'll talk about that when we come back. Will that game even happen? So hang tight, folks. We'll be back. More right here. Sports Journeys version of the After Practice podcast. Welcome back to the After Practice podcast. And I know I said we were going to talk about some college football, and we will, but just got over the the initial shock that there's a trade, folks. The Washington Wizards have traded John Wall to the Houston Rockets for Russell Westbrook. It's happened, and it's difficult to say this because a couple weeks ago, I actually said I didn't like that trade. I didn't like the trade at all. I'm a John Wall fan, and I looked at it just from a sheer point, from a basketball standpoint. John Wall has been injured for 2 years. Russell Westbrook's a guy that plays hard. But I was just, interested to see how he would mesh with a Bradley Beal. But then, you think about it, he played with James Harden, the guy who's ball dominant as well. So, I think coming here, you almost had to make the move because John Wall basically didn't want to be here anymore. It felt like he was disrespected. I was a little surprised with that, just from the standpoint that, like I said, he's been out pretty much for 2 years. No one owes you anything at that point, especially when you're making $40+ million a year. That's not to knock John Wall. But then, you go back to the offseason. We saw the video, the gang signs and things like that. That's not something that's going to endear you to anyone, that from a corporate standpoint, that is. And they felt like they needed to make the move, so they've made the move. And now we're going to have to dissect this and break it down and talk about what this does for the Wizards. If anything, it makes them a much exciting basketball team. I mean, take nothing away from Russell Westbrook. This guy was an MVP, 3 years ago? So they're not getting chopped liver here. They're getting a dominant basketball player. And now you have to ask yourself, with him and Bradley Beal in the backcourt, what does that do for them? Does it instantly put them at the top of the heap as far as best backcourts? Well, they've got to play together before we can figure all that out. But again, I am surprised that the move was made. It was made. If you're a fan of the Wizards, you have to live with this now. I'm looking here. They made the trade for John Wall and a first-round pick. So I like some of the things that Washington did this offseason. I do. I know a lot of people don't like the Robin Lopez signing at center. I like that quite a bit for them. He's a professional center. He's a guy that will be able to do something with them. He's not going to average 20 and 10. That's not his game. But he's a guy that could get you, perhaps double-digit rebounds, maybe 8, 9 a game, 10 rebounds. If you can do that, that's what you want. If he can be a rim protector, that's what you want. He's a tough, hard-nosed player, and God knows that they've had their issues at center over the years. Martin Gortat, when he was here, was a really good offensive center, but was kind of a liability on the defensive end. So now you're getting a center that can come in here and play defense and give you something that you haven't really had in a long time, and allow for some other players to not have to play down there, undersized. I know the game has changed. Center play is different from what it used to be. A lot of centers now are actually stretch fours. Washington seems to have one, and Thomas Bryant. So, again, what does this move with Westbrook do to the overall picture for Washington? I like the draft pick that they had as well, their first-round draft pick, the kid from Israel. So they've got a couple pieces in play here that they possibly can do some things with. They, they re-signed Davis Bertrand, Berton. So that was a good move on their behalf. I like the fact that they have Cassius Winston, as potentially a backup point guard. I thought he was a really good player at Michigan State. So there's some things that they're doing here. Rudy Hachimura, last year was a decent rookie for them. There's some pieces here, but naturally this is going to start and go with Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook, and I'm curious. I'm curious to see how these two guys will mesh. Let me know your thoughts. As always, tweet me. Let me know. That seems to be my thing now. I used to do emails and read them on the show and stuff like that. I like reading your comments from Twitter, so again, just, let me know your thoughts on the trade. Is it a good trade, a bad trade? Was it needed? Was it not needed? What does this do for the Wizards? Does this, make them a playoff? I don't want to use the words contender, but does this make them a playoff team? Are they a team now that last year was fighting to be an 8? Was a couple games out of being the 8th. They did go to the bubble, which, I didn't think that was legitimate for them to even have to go, just for entertainment standpoint. But I think now with Westbrook, as I thought with John Wall, I did think they were a playoff team. Now with Westbrook, are they going to be a 7 seed, an 8 seed, a 6 seed, maybe even a 5 seed? But the East is loaded. The East has some talent now. I think Brooklyn jumps to the forefront. Toronto's still going to be good. Milwaukee's still going to be great. They get Drew Holiday. I think that's a big move for them to help, try to convince the Greek Freak to stay when he's due next year for his this big decision on what he's going to do. So Boston, another young team that played well. Then Philadelphia, they get Doc Rivers as their coach, and to try to help with the situation with Joel Embiid, and see if they can get that team to play really good basketball. So a lot of teams in the East now that now feel like, why not us? I think the Atlanta Hawks are going to be an exciting basketball team this year. They've made some good moves with, bringing in Rondo, and they drafted a kid from USC who's an athlete. They also, had a nice free agent signing. And then you look over at Charlotte, they get LaMelo Ball. They draft him, and then they also signed Gordon Hayward via free agency. So I know I'm just rattling off names here, but I think the East will be better than some people expect it to be. And I think that, Washington can be in the thick of this thing now in the East. Not saying they're going to be one of the top 2 or 3 seeds, but I definitely think that they're a team that could surprise. And it's going to be interesting to see, if Westbrook's happy to be here. We all know that Wall wanted to leave, but does Westbrook want to be here? Because remember, he got his way and got to Houston via Oklahoma City after being there for all those years. So, this is another move again for him in a couple years. So we'll see if he's going to be happy in the nation's capital. Hopefully they greet him with open arms, because he definitely can bring a toughness and a tenacity to this basketball team that they've lacked for a while. So, yeah, I thought I would give you that real quick. I know it's off the cuff, but I figured I saw that breaking and went across my screen. I was like, yeah, we got to talk about that. So it's happened. Russell Westbrook traded to the Washington Wizards. John Wall and the first rounder go to Houston in exchange for the all-star point guard, former MVP Russell Westbrook. Getting back to the football side of things, like we had originally talked about, college football. It's in a situation right now where you clearly know who the best team in the country is. It's Alabama. Then, Clemson's right there with them. Notre Dame's playing really good football. Who's going to be the 4th team? There's a lot of teams that are jockeying to be there, and one of those teams is the Ohio State University. Well, Ohio State has to play a minimum of 6 games to be eligible for their conference championship game 1, which they would be in if they're eligible. The problem is they need one more game because they've had a cancellation. You have to have 6 games. They have 5 right now. But this is the issue. The team that they play for their final game, which they play every year for their final game, Michigan, their arch rival, one of the biggest rivalries in all of college football. Michigan, I don't want to say seems to be shutting it down, but they had to postpone their game for this weekend, so they shut it down. You're a rivalry, a storied, heated rivalry with Ohio State, and you haven't beaten Ohio State in years. It's been a while since you've beaten them. If you can't beat them on the field, guess what you can do? You can beat them from afar by shutting it down. And I know Ohio State people don't want to hear this, but if you're Michigan, you could drive a stake through Ohio State this year without even playing them, by not playing them. Literally, by just saying, we're shutting this thing down. COVID's really, and this is nothing to play with here because people are getting sick here. We know this. Now players and coaches are getting sick and they're being forced to shut things down. But if you're Michigan, you've had a horrible season, just an epically bad season for a team that a lot of people thought were going to be good. If you shut it down and don't play Ohio State may not be eligible, period. They don't have enough games. It would force the Big Ten powers to be to come together and change the rule overnight. I mean, literally overnight, because Ohio State clearly is one of the best 4 or 5 teams in the country. Everyone knows that. One of the best 4 or 5 programs in the country. Everyone knows that. You can't debate that if you look at the success they've had over the past decade. But with all that said, Michigan's not beating Ohio State on the field. They're going to get drubbed. It's in the shoe as well. They're going to get the hell beat out of them. So guess what? You can say to Ohio State, we can't beat you on the field, but guess what? You're not going to the playoffs. You're staying home with us and watching it because we're not playing you. That's a rivalry, folks. Rivalries aren't supposed to be pretty. They're not supposed to be friendlies. This isn't soccer. They're not supposed to be good. And if you're Michigan, you could drive a stake through Ohio State's playoff fortunes and chances by just not even playing them, not even showing up in Columbus, and see what happens. I'm just throwing it out there. I know it sounds crazy. I've heard this, kind of sprinkling around a little bit. I would hope, Michigan doesn't do that. I mean, you got to man up. I mean, you're having a bad year, you're having a bad year. You got to take your L's. You got to take your beatings. That's just the way it goes. Look at my team. Look at Penn State. Again, we are. But look at them. We're struggling. 1 win, but they're still playing. They're still trying to develop some young guys, which maybe, hopefully, helps them next year, when hopefully we're back to normal here. But you can't just not play a team. But if you're a rivalry, I'm telling you, it's something to think about. Let me know what you think about that. I think a lot of people may say, Lake, you're crazy. But I bet you there are a couple of you out there to say, you know what? You might have a good point there. So we'll see. Look, I wanted to get this one in for you guys, just get something in quick. But I wanted to watch the game today before I did this. So I know it's late. I want to wrap this up and just let you know also, you can check out, my stint on ABC today. Scott Abraham and myself break down Washington, break down Pittsburgh, break down, where this team's trending and where they're going. And, we'll have a lot more to talk about this week after a couple more practices and preparations getting ready for the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday. So I appreciate you checking me out today, having me just do this off the cuff. But as always, you guys know I appreciate you out there, appreciate the support that you give me. And, I appreciate the kind words. A lot of people say they like the video version of this. So definitely appreciate all your support out there. So have a great rest of your evening. Take care.